Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 of our videos on the modal verbs. Now you've already watched part 1 and part 2, so you know how this works. In this part we're talking about may and mustn't. And may expresses permission. If you do not know what permission means, then please stop the video now and look it up in the dictionary in your language. You need to understand the concept of permission. And after you've done this, please come back and then we continue. You already know from part 2 that modal verbs cannot be put into the different tenses in English. So we're looking for a form that we can put at the place of the modal verb. And for can, it was to be able to. For may, it is to be allowed to. And mustn't, the negative form, then of course is not to be allowed to. And again, as with to be able to and can, you have to be allowed to, you have the be here, and this is the solution for all your problems because to be can be put in all the different tenses. Let's have a look at the list: simple present, simple past, and future. So in the simple present, of course, you have can, which can also express permission, but of course you have may and the negative form mustn't. And now you have to be allowed to, so this is easy, is am, is, and are allowed to. I am allowed to go to the party, he is allowed to, and they are allowed to. They may go to the party, they are allowed to go to the party. And of course the negative forms, I'm not allowed to, he isn't allowed to, and they aren't allowed to. But for the present tense, this is easy. You can also use may and mustn't. You do not have to use to be allowed to. In the simple past, however, there's only the replacement form. May cannot be put into the past tense, so you have to use was or were allowed to, or the negative forms wasn't or weren't allowed to. I wasn't allowed to go to the party last night. The same for the future. You have to work with to be allowed to, and then you have will be allowed to, or the negative form won't be allowed to. So please remember, the replacement form for may is to be allowed to, and for the negative form mustn't is not to be allowed to. Let's have a look at a couple of sentences. Can he or may he go to the disco? And now you can also ask, is he allowed to go to the disco? And the answer, no he can't, no he mustn't, or no he isn't allowed to go. Or we weren't allowed to go to the disco last weekend, which is the past tense, or but we will be allowed to go next weekend, which is the will future. And a more complicated sentence, if we had done our homework, we would have been allowed to go to the disco last weekend, and we would have been allowed to go is the conditional in the past, and here you have to use the replacement form to be allowed to. So please remember may to be allowed to and mustn't not to be allowed to when you are asking for permission.